There is no country in the world that does not need to look critically at its food system and to adapt and often to transform how food systems are functioning. In the current geopolitical context, and especially in Africa, these are very acute issues now around food security, around cost of living, that make it more clear than before that the action on food systems is urgent. The problem is no government controls all aspects of the food system, and food systems are very complex things cutting across different sectors. So we as FOLU partners in Kenya, in East Africa and elsewhere in the world, we want to see how we as a coalition of organizations can support local actors in accelerating and deepening the discussions around food system transformation. If I might add, there's a number of reasons why food systems need to be addressed. The most important one is that food has often become very expensive, and we have hundreds of millions of people globally who are living in hunger, acute hunger. But there's other reasons. Food systems are the main drivers of biodiversity and nature loss. Food systems are a third of the climate problem, and processed and other forms of food that are not healthy are contributing to huge health impact, negative health impact. So there's at least 4 reasons of why every country, every society needs to critically look at what can be done locally, regionally and globally to find a kind of more sustainable ways of providing people with affordable, healthy and sustainable food. As I said, food systems are very complex things, but on the other hand, the approach is not so complex, and that means that we need to really respect the context of each country and of each situation, drawing from local science, from what the situation is. So the design of specific interventions that can help with making existing food systems more sustainable is very much a contextual question. But feeding into that is science that is done at global level, at regional level. And so the role of SDSN as part of FOLU and from other FOLU partners is really to see what we can bring to the table in these critical country-led discussions on what specifically are the dimensions of the challenge around food and land use in Kenya, in Tanzania or in other countries, and what is the combination of specific policy instruments that can help us address this. And again, the core complexity here is that it's an interdisciplinary issue, and we need to bring in the issue of land use, where land is competed for by environmental, by climate, by economic development pressures, and it's really important that these are reconciled and that there is kind of a very focused, nationally owned process of identifying local solutions to address food system problems in country with things that we know from within country. And so the role of our FOLU platforms in the countries where we have them is to support that process and to identify also the needs that we can help make the case internationally, for example, for additional financial resources and for capacity inputs whenever that might be needed. Most governments, and I would say all governments in Eastern Kenya, have perfectly fine, good quality policies in place. Not maybe for every aspect of the food systems agenda, but there are good policies in place. And when looking at existing policies and trying to understand why are they not implemented, why are they partially implemented, resources, and both financial and human resources are named as the main source of the issue. The truth is, some of the most powerful things that can be done to transform food systems don't cost anything. And some of the most expensive things don't do anything. So it's not about money, but without money, it is difficult for most governments in this region, given the, at this stage, alarming rate of debt, given the competing demands on governments for all kinds of social services to deal with social impact from rising cost of living and food prices and so on, that it's very difficult to see any major breakthrough on these policies and to really the food systems and land use agenda in general if countries are not giving opportunities for their good policies to get international funding in an easy, unbureaucratic and sufficient way. And this is, I'm afraid, where the agendas, the national agendas, hit the wall, because internationally it is very difficult at this stage to mobilize funds at sufficient level to do so. There are very important discussions going on debt relief, and I think most African countries are in a dire spot. Debt relief, whether it's broad in general or it's specific, and including even instruments like debt swaps, for example, to allow countries, instead of servicing existing debt and maybe putting it into short-term social policy action or climate action or interrelated action, that would be a very powerful way to boost action that is helping us on the climate front, on the development front, and on the health and nature front. Everybody has their role to play. The most important thing is, and sometimes we overlook this, is we need fora for discussion. We need opportunities for people to exchange their perspective, and we need opportunities for everyone to come together around a joint, shared definition of the nature of the challenges. There is way more capacity in Kenya, in Tanzania, in Africa to deal with these issues than is needed. It's not a capacity problem, but it is a problem of coordination. It is a problem that is inherent in the complexity of the issues. It is also difficult because it depends so much on geopolitical events. I think the parting shot would be we should not just look at money. Money needs to be more part of our thinking in terms of mobilizing it for countries to implement existing plans. But internally, we should put much more emphasis on bringing people together and bridging differences in perceptions to allow farmers to be part of the conversation, to allow people who are in sectors that are not dealing with food directly to understand the importance of it. We need to break down the silos and the portfolios that people and the borders people have in their heads, because it's really important that we have people who are involved in education to understand why food systems need to be changed. Just that we within the food space need to understand what the other issues are. What are the key, how does education link? And if anyone cares about the issues, there is literally no link that you cannot find. You can find the link between education and food, you can find it between security and food, with poverty and food. We need to establish these linkages, and we need to organize dialogue around these linkages so that things don't get stuck in their little bubble and little corner. But there's a lot of capacity, lots of smart people, everybody broadly wants the same thing, so I'm very hopeful for the coming years.